Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we explore the intersection of race, culture, and society in the United States. I'm your host, Charles King, and today we have a very special guest joining us, Dr. Fernando Branch. Dr. Branch is a renowned expert in the fields of mental illness, social mobility, and education. Let me tell you guys a little bit more about Dr. Branch. Dr. Fernando Branch received his Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff and later pursued his MA from from Union University, that is. He began his career in education, teaching high school AP Geography, World History, and Economics for 10 years in Memphis, Tennessee. He began his school leadership journey as a school administrator, focusing on school turnaround efforts in Denver public schools for over 13 years, serving in every region of our community and currently serving at Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. While in DPS, Dr. Branch has served on several Denver Public School committees, District Accountability Committee, District Design Committee for the first annual MAK Symposium, and the African American Equity Task Force. Dr. Branch has assisted Denver Public Schools with attracting and retaining people of color. Consequently, he assisted the Human Resources Department in efforts to help the district recruit diverse, talented principals, teachers, and support staff. At the school level, Dr. Branch championed community, equality, and diversity for all students and staff. Dr. Branch has a long history of promoting education, academic excellence, and attainment in Denver youth and higher education institutions, as well as in nonprofit space. Spending time at College Track, Aurora, and Colorado, I Have a Dream Foundation. Dr. Branch has concentrated his studies in education, leadership, and policy to close the opportunity gap in marginalized communities. Dr. Branch is ambitious to discover innovative solutions to create an equitable approach toward educational policy making for youth all over Colorado, from rural communities to urban centers. He continues to stand ready to explore new partnerships and growth opportunities in the Denver metro area and across Colorado, while at the same time maintaining high expectations for our students, families, and community partners. Dr. Branch is a strategic thinker, passionate about working alongside youth and families to ensure they have the resources and skills to succeed throughout their lives. He believes we can change the world with a shared voice vision. He is committed to instilling a love for education in our youth as he sees that as the cornerstone for generational change, social mobility, and community empowerment. When Fernando is not doing this work, you can find him beekeeping, painting, fishing, and spending time with his wife and two daughters. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Dr. Fernando Branch. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So honored and glad to be a part of it.
Yes, sir. We are very happy to have you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that wonderful bio that I just read for you?
Nah. I think yeah, I'm a lover of music and good catfish, man. So if I can get some crawfish at Touffet or something like that up here in Colorado, it'll make me a lot happier. But I'm good. You did a great job.
Well, thank you so very kindly. Well, and so let's dive into this wonderful show here. Um, we're thrilled to have you on the show, and let's start by discussing your work in mental illness. Can you share with our listeners a bit about your background and what drew you to this field?
Yeah, so I want to just start off just with the acknowledgement that that's not an area of focus where I've received any degree training. That's something that um, over the last, I think, 5 years, I recognized that there was a gap not only in the research, but I had personal experience as I was working on my doctorate to find the level of isolation. As well as the lack of supports in which Black men just don't have, or it don't exist within the current ecosystem and structure around providing mental health supports. whether it's on the SEL side, the strategy side, the physical health side, but also the mental health side. So that's very much something that um, I just developed a passion to out of necessity, and recognizing that there wasn't a number of people who looked like me that were one talking about these issues that are impacting men, but more importantly, there was nobody talking about it through a lens of preventative care, right? It baffled me that when you research preventative mental health in relation to Black men, you hardly see anything uh, that comes up, right? It just doesn't exist. And I can go as far as to say men of color, period, around preventative mental health supports. So it's really something that fell in my lap out of necessity. Here in Colorado, COVID really hit hard. I'm an extreme extrovert, and I found myself in a position where, man, I could do normally what I do in order to get back above the line to recharge. And I had this stint where I was saying, you know what, I'm not myself. I'm not currently the person that I normally am, and that really caused me to start calling a couple of my friends and other people, and I would ask questions. Hey, how you really doing, brother? How's your mental health? And when I first, brother King, I started doing that, everybody thought I was playing. They thought I was joking, like, yo, man, what's wrong with you? Like, what are you really on? But then it hit me. It was like, no, really, how is your mental health? And in every conversation I had, it come to find out that we were all carrying some of the same traumas and some of the same um, triggers, whether macro or microaggressions, and we had nobody to talk to about it. So when I discovered that, we decided to create CMOC, which stands for the Colorado Men of Color Collaborative, that provides a space and an opportunity for men to openly have conversations and get support around their mental health in order to improve their overall health and social mobility.
Oh, wow. So, what were some of the things that you found or discovered in the research that you were doing?
Yeah. So, let's start off with funding. Everything in relation to Black males is restorative, right? All your significant grants in your philanthropy space for the most part, anything in schools, everybody want to push restorative justice. Everybody want to put restorative structures and methods and methodologies. I found it fascinating that nobody was talking about Black man's mental health through a preventative lens, right? So let's think about that. When you fund organizations and you fund activities that are only geared towards restorative practices, that means that's after you've already gotten in trouble. That's after you've already had an impact. That's after you've already put yourself in a predicament that could have been easily avoided by using preventative measures. I think that was the biggest piece of the learning, because I understood then that the infrastructure around a lot of these organizations that fund supports around mental health or men's health in general, nobody was talking about it through a preventative lens. And I had to ask myself the difficult question: why? Why aren't people talking about mental health or the health of Black men through a preventative lens? And I couldn't find any organizations that were willing to not only fund preventative programming, but also take the initiative to say, hey, there's the data right now supports the not only the need, but the desire that this is not only the most present issue right now, as we know, Black male suicide disproportionately is up in reference to any other minority group. Why can't we get funds, and why can't we get resources in our communities, into our schools, into our churches, to start having these difficult conversations about mental health?
Oh, wow. So, I guess I'm sorry. There's another question I want to ask on that, because that's very, very interesting, and that's very astonishing. Like, as you delve into that, did you do any comparative analysis as to Black men's mental health compared to other ethnicities, or comparable to Black men and white men? Were there any other ways of actually doing some studies in that area?
Yeah, there was one study that I did that I didn't actually do it. I actually read that Black men were 80% more likely not to seek out mental health assistance and support, where they're carrying twice as much trauma as their white counterparts. Right now, here's the kicker: the reason that they didn't seek out any additional support and any additional measures was the stigma. Let me say it again: the stigma that they thought that would be perceived by them asking for support around mental health. It blew me away that we have people who are mentally ill in some state, right? And because of what they think other individuals would think about them or perceived about them, won't seek out the type of supports that they need. And I tell people all the time, there's a strong correlation with mental health, with education attainment, social mobility, economic improvement. If we don't get the mind straight, then we can't expect for people to go out into the workforce and to keep a job or to keep a family dynamic structure if you're not mentally first, not just stable, but um, you're mentally strong, right? You have to have that tenacity and that grit to be able to not only support that mental state, but also sustain it in the everyday things that we do.
Okay. Um, so as fascinating as that is, there's another mental health question that's very important, and that is, for the communities of color, how do you approach addressing mental health disparities in your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I can tell you one thing that I've been working on here at Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. There's an article called "The Waters of System Change," and it talks about a concept called radical containers, and it basically says that traditional methodologies say that resources, people, money, governance, they typically fund those things at the top and they work themselves down right to the people. We know that traditionally hasn't always worked, right? um, this concept, waters of system change, says you got to start at the top and you start at the bottom and then you work your way towards the middle. In the middle is where you create this thing called radical containers, where you really penetrate human being preceding human doing. You change the dynamics of how we live and how we process and how we do the work, how we change systems. You change systems by changing people. When I discovered that, I said, being in a K-12 space and knowing black males are disproportionately suspended, the disproportionately labeled in special education program, all the data would support that black males are, for the most part, at the bottom in all of these different categories: literacy, mathematics, post-secondary readiness. I said, what do we apply to different strategy? What if we use that radical container model, where we worked from the top down and the bottom up, and we met in the middle to build authentic relationships with our students? Man, I can tell you, it's not only working; it's really thriving here in Colorado, where we use the castle framework around social emotional learning. We start teaching strategies to our young men around how do you navigate these conversations, these regular invitations that come up in life, and how you process it. Are you in control of your thinking? And it was such a different paradigm shift to what and how we typically function within a K-12 space. But I can tell you, to have a school that's about 62, 63% African American boys, and to have them being able to engage in conversation around mental health strategies and understand coping mechanisms, but also knowing where they are on the individual line, right? Whether they're in control of their thinking or not. That's how you disrupt the school to prison pipeline, and it truly starts with that mental health capacity again, because we can get them to not only acknowledge where they are in their mental state, we can get them to acknowledge where they are performing academically or where they are socially.
Oh, wow. Now, let me just ask you a little bit more about that. Can you tell me that maybe some of the issues that brought these young men into this situation, that maybe from the teaching perspective, maybe there was some things that was missing in concepts as to how they taught them,
Yeah.
or was it just a natural thing that they just had this disability?
I think it might have been a combination of a couple things. I think environment is one that you have to call out, right? Um, whether it's Chicago or Memphis or Denver, right? The environment of our students, their perceptions are their realities. I don't take that away from anybody, because where you live and where you lie and where your feet are really is the pressures and the traumas, and the stress that you live, right? Um, I think the other thing that probably contributed to it was just inconsistency. A lot of inconsistent with the particular school, but also being firm in the instructional programs, the instructors that are in front of you, the leadership that's in front of you. All these things kind of play into what we as men, right, we call chronic stress, right? It's no difference. We know disproportionately, and again, this gets back to mental health. The experience that our boys are experiencing are the exact same things that our men are experiencing. We disproportionately die because of chronic stress. Why? Um, Cancer, prostate cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all these things that the researchers show that disproportionately we're impacted by, and gives us a lower life expectancy. I try to educate them on those things early, right? What are the things you have control of, and what are those things that you don't have any control of? And how can I support you as a school leader, to not only give you those tools to be able to process those things independently, but really to take ownership and empower yourself, to be able to cultivate and grow from these things, in spite of the fact that you know uh, people want to think our kids come to us and they're perfect, right? Yeah, they're human just like we are. And when you treat them with that level of dignity and respect, and I think transparency, and you do it in a way also with high expectations, they respond appropriately, and I think they really appreciate it because now they understand there's this holistic approach to education that they might not have seen. And I'll tell you this, the other thing. Again, this school is 63, 62% African American males. Probably about 60% of my staff, it looks like them, is men of color. From a cultural standpoint, that was a tremendous shift, to have other people who look like them. And let me say this, you can have black men in education that are doing other things other than discipline. My school is a great example of that, where you might not see a black male who is in a non-instructional core instructional role. So that also anteed up that level of responsibility, where we're 3.8% of the population here in Colorado, I believe. When you come into a school and you see 60% of your teachers who look like you, this is the first time in their educational experience that they're seeing a person who looks like them who's actually teaching them.
Wow. Now that's powerful and impactful.
Absolutely.
And I've got to believe that that has got to be some inspiration and some motivation to make these young men want to learn, and they feel safe and secure as well when you mention environment, because with that they feel, I'm sure that they feel like everything is going to be okay.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about social mobility. What are some of the key factors that can either facilitate or hinder social mobility, particularly for Black Americans?
Man, education. Um, I tell people all the time, um, people who tell folks that college isn't for everybody, usually that's somebody who went to college. Usually that's not a person that didn't go to college, right? That's telling you that it's not for everybody. I go on record of saying that um, the potential and the aspiration for college is for everyone. Our kids should have the option to choose whatever trajectory that they want, but they should not be limited, or they should not have adults um, painting a narrative into their mind that they didn't necessarily get themselves. You can't be a PhD or a master's level educator or of any profession, and tell a child this the track you took it wasn't the best possible track for them. So I think that's the very first thing. I think the second thing is, um, you know, through education and the experiences of cultivating real life skills and experiences, we got to be able to adapt and to innovate, and to get ahead of the curve of doing away with chaotic structures and systems that no longer serve a 21st century career trajectory for our youth and our adults. We know right now that the next 50 years are going to be brand new jobs invented every single day, that we won't have people um, to replace in the current a job field, job market. But we're not changing fast enough within this K-16 structure to fill those positions. So I think we have to be really honest and say, what are the aspects of education that are broken, that are hindering us from getting people in the workforce? Because we know this, there's no shortage right now of jobs, especially higher earning positions, aerospace, pilots, right? You got drone development, you got engineers, construction. We don't, every city in America right now has a shortage of construction. And some of these positions are high earning three-figure positions. Um, how are we propelling our youth? How are we propelling our men into these fields, and using, I think, the components that allow us within a public school system, but also working across um, boundaries, working with charters, working with colleges and universities, working with philanthropy and nonprofits, to be really intentional and strategic on a regional and a local level, to feed into this narrative um, that will isn't there. I don't believe that. I don't believe that there are black men unwilling to do work, especially to earn a living, if it's a living that is going to stabilize themselves and their families and their communities. I really believe it's a question of access. And then it's a question of information. How are we getting information out? Um, how are we, cultivating opportunities of growth, but also cultivating opportunities of success? Because too often you hit these uh, overnight one hit wonder programs, and then 3 or 4 months later, the program is no longer in existence, or um, the pathway structure is no longer in existence. We just got to be really strategic and really think more collaboratively as community, and make firm commitments in order to build out these opportunities and pathways for success.
So those strategies that you were just thinking of in that concept, do you teach any strategies to for people to implement and to be impactful in using those in any kind of way?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I wouldn't say that I teach those strategies. I think that'll be a full-time job within itself. I will say what I've tried to do here in Denver, and it's not just me. There's so many other organizations that are doing very similar work like this with me. I try to put myself in spaces to be collaborative, to form collaboratives of other organizations, other people who um, are allies in this work from every side and every angle, from every background, from every disposition, to say, if you're in the work of improving humanity, if you're in the work of improving marginalized communities and giving access to those who don't have a voice, I align myself with them and figure out ways that we can do community work and collaborate. Um, I don't know if I have enough time in the day to actually um, help build out the strategies. But when there are opportunities for me to participate on a strategic level, a good example is Kana's Water as a Systems Change Framework. I'm a firm believer, and that's something that I use within my nonprofit. But there's also a model that I know to be proven to use in the philanthropy space as well, that I know that works.
Wow. So moving on to education, you've done extensive research on the impact of education and on social mobility. How can we ensure that all students, regardless of their background, have equal access to quality education?
Yeah, we have to start having really critical conversations. And what I mean by critical conversations, we have to. A good teacher knows that if you're going to have a culture in a classroom that's going to be successful, you're going to have a non opt out culture, which means that every kid every day in class every day, right? You're going to do be the absolute best version of yourself every day in that classroom, and that teacher's going to hold you accountable. I think that level of accountability has to be applied throughout the entire system of the K-12 and K-16 structure, right? If something is broke, let's fix it. If something is not working, let's retool it and recreate it. Um, I also believe that, again, the intentionality piece. We know the careers and where the jobs are lacking. It doesn't make sense for us to continue to keep school structures and models that aren't starting early enough to start preparing our kids. I'll give you a good example, Brother King. AI, artificial intelligence. We've been hearing about this for about what, the last 5, 6 years,
Well, yeah, for it being forward now, yes.
right? How many high school programs or middle school programs that have concentrations of AI right now that are serving kids? I can't think of one, right? We know that there are jobs for the next, I don't know how many years they're going to have a focus area around this. We know you have basic computer programming, but this is new age stuff. So I also think we have to solar. That's a good example, right? We know that these industries are here. Why can't we start building these programs as early as, fifth and sixth grade to start exposing our students to career trajectory and opportunities? Because I'm also an advocate of smart thinking and smart education. If a student can graduate from high school and be making, more than me as a high school principal, I think that's a pretty good living. That's a pretty good income, right?
Mhm.
I still think college is for everybody, and the ability to go to college should be granted to everybody. That's very different than saying college isn't for everybody. I think everybody should have that option and that opportunity. And being intentional with pathway development and career exploration around soft skill and skill development is important. Um, Soft skill development, that's a piece too where there just hadn't been a significant focus, I think, the last 10 years on communication. Our students need to be able to speak. They got to be able to articulate their thoughts in a way that's not only understood. Interviewing, right? Do we teach them the STAR technique? That's something I learned when I was in Upward Bound on Lemoyne campus a long time ago. Somebody pulled me aside and said, hey, here's a basic etiquette around interviewing. So thinking about that holistic approach again, and providing those soft skills that students that we got to get back to doing some of that because industry right now is telling us, yeah, kids are coming to us, but they don't have the soft skills to be able to do the work and to be able to navigate the environment. That's just as important.
So tell us, what are some of the common misconceptions about social mobility?
I think the biggest one is that people can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, right? Uh,
Come on,
can I
Clarence.
can I share something with you and your viewers?
Most definitely.
And this is a true story. When I finished my doctorate, for the very first time in my life, somebody told me, they said, well, Dr. Branch, you're overqualified for this position.
Oh, wow.
And I said, man, this is interesting. I was in reflection mode a moment ago because yeah, and I'm a pretty qualified person in most things I do. I said, man, this is interesting because I've only heard my entire career that either I was underqualified and all of a sudden I got this degree, I instantly became overqualified. I said, there's never been a point of time as a young adult I've ever been qualified for a position. So I really do think that, and I share that story because um, that's just not my story. I think that's the story of a lot of people who look like me and have been blessed and fortunate enough to matriculate up in academia that experience that. So I think there are some systematic things that we have to continue to work on, where it's not as simple as people just pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps. That's not the lived experience that everyday people um, holistically all navigate. That every there are challenges which some of us, especially I think our minority populations, experience disproportionately, but also experience due to oppressive structures and systems that are in play that were, put in play long before you and I were born, And I'm sure the task and the challenge that we do this work to try to eliminate is those inequities that disproportionately put one group over another, regardless of how much they want to try and to improve and pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. I think everybody needs a champion, and um, there's a reality though that sometimes a champion isn't enough for some of us, right? So
Mhm.
when that happens, what do you do um, to change the paradigm and to support those who need that support most, especially who are just as talented as anybody else out there?
So, what are the biggest challenges facing students from marginalized backgrounds in our education system?
Yeah, that's a heavy question. Um, I think coming out of COVID, I will tell you the biggest challenge right now is mental health supports. Is feeding the need on the mental health side what our students need, um, both emotionally, um, both through strategic engagement, through instructional support, through additional coaching. Um, I missed that. I was working on my doctorate, as I said, and I came back in this year. Um, the gaps were magnified greater than I've ever seen in 25 years of being in education, but also the social dynamics. Um, I think there were some research came out about 8-year olds right now who were in kindergarten during COVID that having masks on during this whole experience, they lost certain expressions and certain things that um, we're going to continuously see that students are struggling with. We got to fill those gaps. I think that's the mental health piece is number one. I think the other piece is these students are brilliant, man. There's no. I'm not gonna say it was better back in the day. No, our kids are amazing. They're brilliant right now. I actually think that we as adults, um, we have to do a better job of adapting to the speed of information and exchange of information to be able to keep up with what's going on right now. Um, I know this is something that I've been thinking about really heavy. How do I improve instructional methods and strategies of engagement around technology? Because they know before I do, and if I'm not able to adjust the ways in which they learn best, then I think it disproportionately puts my student population at a disadvantage when other people will totally embrace new forms of technology and new ways of thinking about how are we teaching? Are we teaching in open space areas? Are we doing outdoor classrooms? Are we using STEAM education? Are we building drone based programs? Are we being on the cutting edge of what's coming? Or are we, living to the brick and mortar of a traditional structure that those jobs are becoming obsolete? So we have to be able to evolve, and I think that takes a level of for students in particular. They're vocal, man. Like if you've ever hired a millennial, you know that quality of life is a deal breaker. I'm gonna say that again. If you can't talk about that quality of life component, that's a significant deal breaker. So a qualified candidate who's extremely intelligent um, will walk away from that position if it's not flexible enough to allow them to maintain a level of personal balance. I think that's important. That's not 40, 60 years ago where, our parents who worked within the union 45 years and that was the only job that they had. And then me, being a little bit younger, my generation changed jobs 2, 3 times. These guys, this generation that coming up right now, they might be that generation that they move pretty fluently within their career because there's just so many more opportunities and the skills are also transferable greater now than I think that it ever has been in the history of our nation.
Well, I'm going to say this before I move on. I tell you, it is really impressive to hear that you guys are doing something of the magnitude in which you're doing in the Mountain West. That in itself creates a whole different appearance. That's diversity within itself, but also This is where people like you and the people that work with you, people need to be knowing a whole lot more about what it is that you guys are doing, because this is really good stuff. Now, what you guys are doing in the Mountain West, I mean, it possibly can go over for as far as like Northwest, maybe even West. But it seems like that kind of educational approach is not something that's taken here on the East Coast,
Mm,
because I think that in itself is what's called maybe too liberated.
mm.
I mean, that's the we're not gonna go into that because that's kind of like more like a political spectrum, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
because I mean, this is impactful stuff that could really make a difference and make a change. But a lot of people that's not about change are not about to even give this kind of program an opportunity to even work.
yeah. I think that those are all strong points, but I can tell you, when you get a full community that recognize the deficits, and when you get the philanthropy space, in the K-12 space, in the corporate space, that's the other piece we didn't mention. Corporations. It's in everybody's best interest to figure out how to collaborate and to figure this out. I will say that's one great thing about Colorado is that you're often in rooms and in spaces where the people who are the decision makers and the collaborators, they're in the room. So there's a will, there's a way to develop it and to do it. It can happen here, but I'm a firm believer. Again, I'm from Memphis. I'm a little country boy from the south side of Memphis, Tennessee. I think a model like this would also work in the South because it's not necessarily indicative around dollars. It's based around basic components of improving the quality of life. Mental health is a component around improving the quality of life. When you got all three of those stakeholders that prioritize that, now the trickle effect goes from the corporation down into the churches and down into the elementary schools, where we're starting to normalize vocabulary. We're normalizing the conversations and the narrative that we want to be true in our community. You're going to start to have systematic change, right? That's different than just pushing dollars and funding programs, um, which the life expectancy of them is the amount of funding that you're going to be able to have to sustain it. We got to think past the traditional ways of developing and sustaining programming. This is just an example where your human capital is your fuel. It's getting people like me, getting people like you who want to reinvest in the community and want to give and contribute and to train and to develop. Um, I think that's the secret sauce.
Mm, definitely, definitely. What are some innovative approaches to promoting social mobility through education?
Yeah. Look, I say this, and I will be a full advocate for this. There are some amazing programs out there here in Denver Public Schools. We have an amazing CTE based program, career technical education programs that give students the off ramps into careers as well as to college. Those are all over the country. We at Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy, we do aerospace engineering, business, entrepreneurship, health sciences, um, as well as what's the other one? Digital media and design, right? Where students are working towards certifications. If you are a high school principal and you have a program where your students are not working towards a certification or an endorsement of some kind, you're already behind the eight ball, because you got to think that we really are at a stage now where it's a global economy and those students are competing against other students and they're competing for other jobs right now. Um, that's by far the biggest factor around social mobility, but I also say being intentional with programming partners, right? I'm in partnership with college track. They're a pre-college based program that expose students to 14 universities and give them scholarships, as well as provide additional programs. College Links is another program that does very similar work. um, Being really intentional with those partnerships, both on the community side as well as the corporation side. I'm super excited about our new partnership with NAF, which allows our students to compete within a concentrated area of focus. They call them academies. That's something I think is going to take it to the next level because they require students to get internships. So when you start putting again, you build those layers, internships, international travel. How are you going to be a global citizen if you're not seeing the world, right? Many of our students who live right here in the city hadn't been up into the Rocky Mountains before, so giving them that regional exposure first, and then start opening up their horizons to other opportunities. We just took a group of students to Texas and Louisiana. They went to TSU, Grambling, Dillard. Um, I'm trying to think what the other schools are. All the HBCUs along that route, where we're giving them the opportunity to not only see themselves and other students, but we're saying, hey, there are amazing things happening in these institutions that look very similar to ours. Um, if not now, when, and if not you, who, right? So let's give them the resources and opportunities to see what's possible, and then cultivate that through a relentless amount of support. That support ultimately changes the outcomes around social mobility, because here's the truth: once you know better, you do better,
True.
right? That old saying resonates, 1,000 years ago, and it truly resonates now, that you can't unlearn something that you've seen. Now, I also will go as far as to say, um, even within your stakeholders, sometimes you have to be critical enough to be able to say, we might need to unlearn things that we've learned before to move forward and progress in a different direction. And that's okay. But building a culture that allows that, that's also the challenge. But that's the work. That's why we do this work, and that's why we want to have an impact to change lives.
Mm. So, how can we address the digital divide in education and its impact on social mobility?
Man, give people access to digital devices. Um, Building that infrastructure around digital literacy. There's so many courses out there right now that you can get a certification in digital literacy, and guess what? It's free. These are free
Wow.
courses right now. There's so many out there that um, will give people the opportunity to get these type of training, but also building this into our workforce, building this into our schools as early as I would say sixth grade is absolutely essential, because most of these tests you could probably take them and pass them and not know that right now you're digitally literate. Um, and keep building upon that, right? Because technology is going to continue to evolve, and as the technology evolved, then the preparation, the training, and the assessments have to be able to evolve with it, to ensure that we are we're collecting data, but we're showing that what we're doing is working, but our students again are digitally literate.
So, do you guys in your school? So, I think you may have said this, so but I may have missed it. You guys actually have like specialized courses that the students actually take a course in this digital learning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when our students come in as ninth graders, they have to sort of like exit our university requirements. The university, not university requirement, but our academy requirements are those are the basic courses that all of our students have to take. Once they take those basic courses and they show competency to be able to take, we call it in Colorado the AccuPlace. Once they shows competency in AccuPlace or PSAT, and they say that they're going to be more than likely be successful to start taking college courses, we expose them to those CE courses in co-current enrollment in career technical courses as early as um, spring semester freshman year. That's a game changer, and this is why. If you are a ninth grade student and you find yourself in spring semester and you're taking 9 hours of college credit, and every semester thereafter you have the capacity to do that, that kid by the time they're a junior, I mean a senior in high school, probably has an associate degree on lock, which means that they financially paid for 2 years of college. And you want to talk about increasing social mobility, knock out 2 years of college while you're in high school at the exact same time. That's, I was talking about pulling you up by your own bootstraps.
Hmm.
That's building in a structure of sustainability where we allow students to be able to empower themselves, but also empower their communities and their families, because that is a significant advantage when you go into your senior year. Your most difficult choice is deciding whether you're going to want to stay your senior year, right? And hold true to all those things, or do you want to just go ahead and go to college? We're finding that we have the capacity for them to do both. They can stay in high school, still be taking all college courses while they're in high school, get that associate degree. And when you're transferring into a college with an associate degree, you're more than likely going to be able to be more competitive around scholarships. So it's a win-win scenario if you start thinking about schooling through that type of a lens of um, career and college exploration, but also attainment, because it's a financial piece where you're changing lives, but you're changing families when they don't have to inherit that budget of knocking out those for first 2 years of college when we can get them knocked out in high school. That connects to social mobility in the sense that you're getting that jump start to where you're not going to be financially in debt, right? You're going to have the additional supports. We build those supports in on the front end. You're more than likely to not only be successful, but you're more than likely to go post secondary as well, because you're going to have those internships and those experiences where you might know engineers that are with Blue Origin or Lockheed Martin as a result of being a part of our aerospace program when you were in high school. You might have interned and made those connections where an engineer is telling you, your freshman and sophomore year, hey, Fernando, you really need to take this particular engineering course if you want to go the mechanic route or you want to go the pilot route. Well, that's important because what? Aircraft mechanics and aviation pilots right now are the two most in demand fields that we know for the next 30 years. So being intentional, doing it with purpose, and having a strategy. So when those students come in, they know this is what we do. Ninth grade, here are your college courses we're going to get you to, and this if this is the track that you want to take, the degree path that you want to take while you're in high school, we're going to support it and we're going to help you get there. But being honest with parents too, to say this is what we do. If this is the right type of a setting for you, um, this is the place where you have the potential to knock out 2 years of college. If you're not committed, it doesn't mean that we won't support you, we won't help you. But at some point, you got to decide when you want to jump on this roller coaster, because it's a unique opportunity, and it's not for everybody, right? If you want to, just come to school and finish with a 1.5, this might not be the type of school for you. We believe in excellence in everything that we do with our students, but we also need a parent community and a greater community as a whole to say, we're going to hold you to that bar and you're going to reach those expectations.
So, in other words, when you get on the pot, you are using it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
uh, what policies do you believe are most effective in reducing educational disparities?
Man, that is a great question right there. Ask me that question one more time. Let me think about that one.
What policies do you believe are most effective in reducing educational disparities
When you say disparities, in what aspect?
in all phases of what's going to be in life?
Um, I think any type of policies around, um, one-time policies around behavior management, those aren't good for our kids. Um, I don't think they like the one strike and you're out policies. They don't work. My school is a prime example of how you can go in the exact opposite direction and change outcomes. Um, I think any policies also around placing limitations on the potential of our kids. For example, programs that lock in a deficit lens around achievement. I think you should do everything possible to run as far as possible away from those, because I think our kids are brilliant. And if we place those negative concentration or programs or opportunities, what's the phrase? My grandmother used to say, she's like, "Baby, all money ain't good money," right? If you out there seeking opportunities and just taking resources um, that aren't in alignment to your mission and vision, but more importantly, in alignment to the community that you're serving and the population of students you're serving, then you're doing a disservice. I think you're doing a disservice. And any policy that condone a deficit mindset about the kids that are in your community and make up the population of where you're serving. It's just not a good deal to do, in my opinion. I always try to go in a different, in the opposite direction of that because I can sleep at night, and I think that's important for me and it's important for my wife, for her to have a husband, and important for my two daughters to have a father that can do this work with integrity. And when I leave here, I can also be dad and a really good husband and not carry that burden and that stress.
Wow. That again, that's really wonderful. And I just I want to commend you again and again and again that I'm just really proud to know that somebody like yourself is making this kind of difference in education, because not every educational system has got something like this that's this impactful. I know that I'm over here in Georgia, but I'm telling you, I can feel that impact every time I read or I hear the things that you're saying, because I know that it makes a difference. But not many people know that it makes a difference because you guys aren't getting that kind of exposure. And I'm just wondering, in this case, do you ever think about that as to some of the other things that get this high praise but not as impactful?
I would be lying if I said I don't think about that. But the power of perspective, right? This is my first year here at this particular school, and it really came out of a tough scenario and situation. Um, I'm old school. Uh, Give me another year. Let this data come back, and let's see whether this showed true to what you feel and what you see when you walk the halls. And we get, man, we get tours every week. We get people from all over the country that come here and they want to look at some aspect of our program because it really is a unique model that I think that's going to be able to transfer. Um, I believe in being humble. I believe in just putting your head down and doing the work. And I think the accolades goes to our kids. I'm a vessel. My job is to servant leaders to build and create the next generation of doctors, of engineers, of lawyers, to take STEAM education to um, new horizons that we've never achieved as a nation. I'm just fortunate enough to be in a school that's um, predominantly African American and predominantly Black boys, where I'm able to be able to engage and to have a level of authenticity similar to what I'm bringing into you right now to create change that we think is going to resonate past this particular school design in Colorado. Because I would love to see a Robert L. Smith STEAM Academy in Georgia, where we're doing this exact same model grounded in SEL. Um, and elevating community and families because that's also a part of it, right? I know my students by name. I know their families by name. We have conversations. We break bread. We talk about um, incoming freshmen next year. The very first thing we tell them, you get a passport, right? The reason you get a passport is that you're going to travel. So we're setting the expectations from the jump. Doesn't matter where you come from. I don't care what hood you come from. I don't care where you think your socioeconomic backgrounds are from. If you can't afford one, and guess what? We'll create a passport scholarship program. We will figure it out because it's no excuse why you're not going to be successful. And I think when you get those components again, you find those partners that believe in a vision, um, like that and a mission like that of what you can achieve and what and how you can do it differently, right? I, I think you get something special. I think Brother King, when you come and visit, you're going to see that everything I'm saying. We have this thing where we say, how you sometimes can go into a building or you go into a school and you might talk to 3 or 4 kids, but they're handpicked kids.
Hmm.
Not here. You come here, you can ask any kid any question because we know who we are, we know what we have, and the authenticity of it is that I feel confident enough in knowing that we're in the very beginning stages, but in 3 years, I think you look back at this interview, and I think you look back at our students, and hopefully you come and you take a visit, and you're going to say, "Wow, he told me that was going to happen," because I give all the all the praise to God and our amazing kids of taking ownership. They take ownership of this school model, and that's the biggest difference in the world when you get a population of kids who they have voice and autonomy, but they own their school.
Oh wow. Um, how can we empower parents to be advocates for their children's education?
You know, um, Parents should research. They should look at the schools. They should also. I'm gonna say this: our school is it's an academically focused school, but our students can also participate in sport and activities. We have to move the conversation away from being professional football players, professional basketball players. We got to become professional engineers. We got to be professional scientists. And the reason why I say that is that the likelihood of our students being able to get there, the statistics show that it's gratefully more and it's capable, it's possible that we can have engineers, we can have the architects, we can have these industry leaders that are becoming great in those things as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I think athletics and all those pieces are important, and we offer sports and we're growing our program, but that is second tier, right? And if you just so happen to be a great basketball player where you can get a scholarship, that's great. But I really want you to be a great basketball player that got a 1400 on the SAT and want to be a mechanical engineer. See, that for me is more fulfilling because the likelihood that you're going to go on an academic for a ride is pretty high if that is in place, right? And even if the athletic thing works out, Jalen Brown, the guy with I think it's Jalen Brown with Boston Celtics, right?
Yep,
I
that's
was reading up on his background, man, and when I was thinking about how we're going to develop these pathways in these academies here, he was the type of student I was thinking about in my mind that, was on a debate team. He played chess. He did these strategic things, and he was a great athlete. That's a great example of how you can exist within both of those worlds, and people can understand that the work that you do, um, that is the work, and it's grounded in academic excellence and just excellence in general, and all those other things that, um, quite frankly, society prioritize us more so, from the athletic standpoint we're known for. Well, we can be great in all those other things and be just as popular as well.
well, being multifaceted is always good. But in this case, like as we're speaking about, what can we do with these parents and get the parents on board? Like, do you guys have like just like staff meeting with parents like on occasions or particular times to get them more involved in the school or school activities to some extent, or maybe giving teaching the parents how to be motivational and to stay up on keeping the kids going? Do y'all do anything like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think August 7th and 8th, we're doing our freshman orientation where we invite the freshman students up. They learn what the Robert F. Smith way is, but we invite the parents up. They learn what the Robert F. Smith way is because again, it's a community. It takes a village, and we got to make sure that they understand the expectations, but also what's going to be asked from them about. Students want to be engineer. They got to have math homework. This is just a part of the process. We don't want to, be 3 months down the road and we got a student who's complaining about homework. Well, this is the track that we want to take. This is how we're going to get you there. And we really need parents to understand and be able to support that. We build in touch points over the fall semester and the spring semester. Didn't have a lot as many this year. It was probably going to be due next year, but I plan on doing more like coffee with the principals. Um, just a state of Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy. We'll do one in the fall, one in the spring. We'll invite parents in to um, get the data to see the data because data is important. What's the state of our school, and they'll get a chance to also learn and be a part of some of the decision makings on the engagement piece around parent engagement, organization engagement as well, because the answer is always in the room. I believe that our parents are extremely talented and their perspectives are just as important as everybody else and all the other stakeholders. And giving them that space and that platform is just as important for us as well. So, yeah, it's we typically plan all those things out. um, during the next couple months. But I tell you what, the reason why I didn't get to a lot of it this year, when I took this position, I got the position around July 15th. So I had about 4 weeks to hire a full staff, um, because we had lost so many teachers that didn't follow the school when the school moved from one campus to the other. So we had about a 90% turnover ratio. But um, all those things that happen, I wouldn't change anything, man, because we have an amazing school. We have amazing students. We have amazing partners. And I think the future is going to be very bright for Robert L. Smith STEAM Academy.
What role does cultural competency play in addressing the mental health disparities?
Man, you're the first person to ask that question. What role does cultural competency play in addressing the mental health disparity? Hmm. I think it's a significant role in the sense that adults to student interactions, when you typically think about middle school or high school, usually that's where you see your biggest differences and philosophies around what's acceptable and what's not. You know what I mean? And what I mean about that is um, understanding another person's lived experience. I think it's absolutely essential to how do you motivate that individual, right? Um, but you also, in times where you can't necessarily, let's say, you know, empathize and understand the exact same perspective, there has to be a willingness to listen. And that willingness to listen has to be grounded, I think, in a level of empathy, but also integrity. And what I mean by that, I've been in a lot of different, and I turned around a lot of schools, and I can tell you sometimes the power dynamic in which adult places on youth is just as much destructive because it can lead to the school to prison pipeline because of instead of de-escalation, it's escalations of situations. Um, from a leadership standpoint, that's an intentional design. So, for example, I don't care about hats. I've never seen a hat take a test. So why am I going to complain to a kid about hats? I don't care. We can talk about this GPA all day. We can talk about this SAT score all day, but things that aren't involved around safety or uninvolved around just basic the way that we do what we do, I don't really care about those things. So when you look at a leader or when you look at teachers who fight battles that have no current significance to the outcomes of that individual student achievement and that class individual achievement, that's a distraction. That's an invitation that's not necessary that unfortunately our kids sometimes RSVP to, right? So I try to eliminate those and help them sustain and create the type of dynamic and culture where those things become non-factors and we're able to prioritize and keep the main focus.
Okay. And how can we better integrate mental health education into school curriculums?
You know, that's a pretty simple one. You bring in your social workers and you give them proactive and preventative opportunities to engage with students, but to engage with staff and training. You do the same thing with your psychologists and you do the same thing with your school counselors. These folks are trained professionals in this, and they have to be empowered and given their voice to be able to. It can't be a one off. It can't be something that you just do in the fall and you just do it in the spring. You're not going to have the impact over time. You really have to anchor in just as similar. You have a mission and vision of the school. You got to have an SEL mission and vision of the school, and that has to be something that every student, every parent, every kid, every adult has to know.
Mhm. What are some successful examples of community based initiatives that promote social mobility?
Community-based initiatives that promote social mobility. Well, I'll give you a good example. Right next to our school is a nonprofit. It's called Cross Purpose, and they specialize in working with students age 17, 18 to about 54. that didn't take the college trajectory, but they offer about 15 career pathways. They expose them within 6 months to a certification that they can go right into the industry. That, in addition to a school like mine, you're talking about changing the social mobility and the social aspect of the entire family, right? Because let's say you have a single mother doing the best she can to support her child, but she wanted to go to college and she had aspirations as well, right? These are conversations I can navigate, and I can say, hey, well, I might not can do something about this particular situation that you're dealing with, but let's deal with the student situation first. Let's say it's around attendance. And then I can ask, what can I help with? What can I do? What is it that you need in order to support your situation, your household better? And she might say something like, Dr. Branch, I would really love to go back to school. I I make referrals. I make referrals to organizations that I know are doing amazing work to increase the social mobility of our constituents, of parents, of students. If that parent goes into that program and in 6 months become an electrician, we're talking about a significant increase in salary, right? And they have the wraparound supports again, similar to me as a school. They do it in a philanthropy space, which makes a great partner for me because they're literally right next door to me, where I can say, hey, here's a parent that has the desire, has the amplitude. Let's figure out how to make this happen. And then you all of a sudden now you start to see, let's say the parents in school, the students in school, they're changing. Everybody's on this growth trajectory. Amazing things happen when you're able to be really intentional like that.
Okay. That's actually really, really good. So, like with a program like that, let's say when you do these referrals and so forth. So, is this kind of like one of those things that, and I may be saying it wrong, so make sure you correct me if I do. But is this like one of those that, where it's like a branch that's attached to you, or is it attached to your school that is still branching out into the community that's doing many things to help build the community?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say that they are a partner with us where we work together with students, career exposure opportunities, but they're a separate organization who just so happen to be right next door to us. The guy who actually ran the organization a while ago, I used to be the uh, assistant principal at Manual High School. He was a parent about 12 years ago when I was at Manual High School. He created this foundation. And when I found out he was over there, I went over there and just said, "Hey, Jason, man, I didn't know that something we spoke about 12 years ago you created." And he was like, "Yeah, absolutely." He gave me a tour. The next thing you know, that I go over there probably once a week and have some coffee and talk to his staff, just continue to build relationships. But they're doing good work, and they're not the only ones. There are other organizations that do the exact same thing too. But from a close proximity standpoint, that's one that I know. And from time to time, you get those conversations with parents, like, "Hey, what can I do to improve myself? What can I do to change additional outcomes?" Or I want to go back to school. That's one of the very first organizations I think of. And if not anything, I'm going to walk over with them to do that introduction because I know the impact that programs like that can have on the family and eventually on my student.
So, how can employers create more inclusive workplaces that support employees' mental health?
I think I'll give you a good strategy. Uh, there's an organization, Top 20, and I usually have my little top 20 sign around here. Uh, they have this. It's a little sign, and it has above the line on one side, and you flip it over, and it says below the line.
Oh,
That
wow.
that simple strategy, and Willow and Paul will tell you that the very first thing I think corporations have to establish is first understanding that it's okay to get a baseline around the mental health of your employees. Right, and say it again. It's okay to have a baseline on the mental health of employees. We are human. We have good days. We have bad days. It's okay to assess and to ask people, where are they? Are they having above the line day or are they having a below the line day? And being able to honor that is just as informative, because if you go in and you're doing an evaluation or you're doing a performance evaluation, you see somebody has already notified and said, "Hey, I'm below the line today." That might be not the best day to do that particular evaluation, right? It might be more of a better day to just check in with that person to see where they are. When I tell you I know this work and I've been using that concept for over 8 years now, people respect when you give them the dignity of being human beings, but you also give them grace in what they navigate in their daily experience, because there's no way possible me as a leader can tell you where all my teachers are every day unless I figure out and create a tool that gives me the capacity to be able to see where they are. It's also informative. It's a way of communicating, right? Where it's even nonverbal. If I walk in a room and I see the teacher guy on their sign above the line, I know it's a great day. They're in total control of their thinking, and we're going to get this thing going. They're showing up as the best version of themselves for kids. And we're going to go by business as usual. But the counter to that is that if I walk in that room and I see it's below the line, that's that teacher telling me, hey, something's going on. Check in on me, right?
Mhm.
And that's a different way of treating people. And I can tell you, I definitely will do that for the rest of my career, because I see that the level of trust, but also the dignity that you can bring into the workspace is just more fluid, and that's a positive thing.
And what are your thoughts on the representation of mental illness in in the media?
Um, I don't know. I think there are definitely gaps, right? Um, as a person who's a researcher, a practitioner, um, I don't see a lot of information on Hispanic males or Hispanic people in general, Latinx people, from a mental health standpoint. That's a gap in the literature that I wish would be closed, where there's more people doing research on those subgroups, because it's beneficial to my state, one, but it's also beneficial to my school population. Um, I think there should be just a overall greater awareness. I think, tackling the stigmas around it, as it speaks to men, as we start the conversation, there definitely needs to be a lot more attention to that, because suicide rates are real. The dispa, um, the disaggregated data on that shows that it's disproportionately leaning one way versus the other, and bringing extra attention into that could be a help. But not just bringing attention, I also think bringing solutions and supports is just as beneficial.
And what advice do you have for aspiring researchers and advocates in the fields of mental health, social mobility, and education?
Uh, I would tell them to be authentic and be exactly who they are. I would tell them, don't necessarily script their methodologies to someone else's. I think we all bring our own interesting experiences into this work. We bring in our life experiences into the work. We bring in our stories, our values, our cultures, and be bold. Be willing to ask those difficult questions and to elevate questions that aren't getting answers because they're difficult questions. I think now is the time to continue to engage and to elevate those questions and those um, the need for those questions in order to develop the strategies and solutions to propel society forward.
Okay. So, in conclusion, as we wrap up this wonderful show, is there any other thing that you like to leave with our audience as fruit for thought, or how
Uh,
can we contact you?
yeah, yeah, you can definitely reach me at Fernando underscore branch at dpsk12.org. You can reach me at Fernando Branch on almost all social media handles. Um, if you're interested in the work that we're doing around mental health, social mobility of Black men, you can look up cmocc.org, cmocc.org. And I think if there was anything else, I would just say, man, Willie Jolly. I don't know if it was Willie Jolly or Les Brown. I'm a little confused of which one said it, but uh, one of them, I heard Willie Jolly say it back in 1990. No, was that? No, back in 2000 when he came to University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. He said that it only takes a minute, only 60 seconds in it, forced upon you, then refuse it, then seek it, then choose it, but it's up to you to use it. You will suffer if you lose it, give account if you abuse it, for it's only just a minute, but an eternity is in it. I always say that to my students. I always say that to my staff. I always say that to my parents. There's a lot of power in a second, and those that 1 second will change your life if you make that commitment. Because those seconds turn to minutes, those minutes turn to hours, those hours turn to days, those days turn to weeks, and those weeks turn to years. But it starts with a second, that one decision. Um, be empowered. Know that it's already in you. It's in your DNA to be great, and seek it relentlessly as if it was air needed to breathe, and you're going to be successful.
Well, I'd like to thank our audience, and I'd like to thank you, Dr. Branch, for actually taking the time out to visit with us. I hope this is not the last time you're on the show because
Absolutely.
I've got to tell you, this was more enlightening. I knew it was going to be enlightening, but you really just dropped a lot of nuggets that this audience needs to take away as to how to move and shake and make things happen. Because I think everything starts with the way you think. And if you've got critical thinking, that you know exactly what you're thinking about and how to approach things, things can work. You're the perfect example. And as I tell you, I definitely got to come back to Denver, and I've got to make that
Absolutely.
visit to your school because this is something that I know that I'm gonna love, but I definitely have to visit. I really do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And thank you for your time. I thank everybody for listening. And I'll say, please join us tomorrow for another outstanding show at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, thank you, Dr. Branch, and everybody for watching. And you guys have a great night.